Maid's daughter was forced to dance as a joke. Her performance silenced the crowd. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Imagine this. You're at a lavish gala, surrounded by the city's elite. The music is playing, glasses clink, and everyone is enjoying their evening. But then, something unexpected happens. A young girl, no older than 15, is called onto the stage. She's not dressed in an extravagant gown, nor does she have the polished look of the other guests. Instead, she's wearing the simple uniform of a maid, her hair tied up in a messy bun, and her face flushed with embarrassment. She stands there, trembling under the spotlight, her heart racing. She is forced to dance, humiliated in front of an audience that sees her as nothing more than a joke. The crowd bursts into laughter, mocking her every move, as if her presence there was nothing but a cheap form of entertainment. She has no choice but to comply. She feels the weight of every sneer, every snicker, and she wishes she could disappear. But she does not. Instead, she stands tall and takes the first step onto the dance floor. The music begins, and as the beat fills the room, she starts to move. At first, it's slow, hesitant, as if she's not sure whether she should even be there. The laughter of the crowd continues, ringing in her ears. But then, something changes. With every step, she finds herself growing more confident. Her movements, initially awkward and stiff, begin to flow with grace. She spins, her body moving with a fluidity that no one could have anticipated. The crowd goes silent. The laughter stops. What was once mockery now turns to stunned silence. No one expected this. The girl, who was supposed to be a joke, was now commanding the room with her talent. Her performance is flawless, her every movement captivating, drawing the eyes of every person in the room. The rich and powerful guests, who had once thought of her as nothing more than a servant, now watch in awe. They realize too late that they have underestimated her. She's not just a maid's daughter. She's an artist, someone who belongs on this stage just as much as anyone else. Her performance goes on for what feels like an eternity, but in reality, it's only a few minutes. When the music finally fades, the room is left in stunned silence. The girl stands there, breathing heavily, her face flushed, not from embarrassment, but from the pure joy of having proven herself. The crowd, once full of derision, now erupts into applause. But it's not the same applause that you would expect for a simple performance. No, this is a round of applause filled with respect, admiration, and perhaps a touch of shame for those who had mocked her in the first place. The girl smiles, her heart still racing, but now with pride. She may have been forced to dance as a joke, but in the end, it was the joke on them. The crowd had underestimated her, but she had just shown them what true talent looks like. This is the story of how one maid's daughter turned mockery into respect and silenced an entire room with her undeniable talent. The applause slowly died down, but the weight of the moment still hung in the air. The young maid's daughter stood motionless in the center of the dance floor, her chest rising and falling with each breath, her face flushed not from embarrassment, but from the overwhelming rush of triumph. For a few seconds, everything felt suspended in time. The once mocking crowd had fallen silent, unable to fully comprehend the spectacle they had just witnessed. Her graceful movements, her confidence, had taken them by surprise, and now, they could do nothing but watch in awe. But even as she stood there, basking in the newfound respect, the girl could feel the eyes of the wealthy guests still scanning her, still trying to place her into their neatly constructed world of privilege and power. They were not sure what to make of her, not yet, but the seed of doubt had been planted. The young girl glanced toward the far end of the room, where the host of the party, a billionaire businessman named Charles Harrington, stood with a bemused expression. He had watched the entire performance with an air of disbelief, clearly shocked by what he had just seen. For a brief moment, his eyes met hers. There was something in his gaze, a flicker of something deeper than just surprise. Perhaps a realization that he had misjudged her. But just as quickly, his expression hardened again, and he turned to speak with his colleagues. His dismissive behavior quickly returned. He was used to power, used to being the one who controlled the room. But now, he was beginning to understand that there was something different about this young girl. She wasn't just a maid's daughter. She was someone who commanded attention, respect, and maybe, just maybe, a seat at the table. Meanwhile, the girl's heart continued to race as the crowd began to disperse. She was still processing what had just happened. The night had started as a humiliating task, a forced joke, something to laugh at. But now, the tables had turned. For the first time, she felt seen. For the first time, she felt like she belonged, even if only for a moment. The rich guests, who had once laughed at her, were now slowly drifting away from their circles of conversation, their whispers filled with something new, a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and perhaps a little shame. But she didn't care. She had shown them who she was. She had proven that she was more than the life they had written for her. As the night wore on, the maid's daughter quietly stepped away from the center of the room, her body still humming with the energy of her performance. She made her way to the back of the room, where the shadows offered her a brief respite. There, she found her mother, the woman who had worked tirelessly to keep them afloat, the woman who had endured countless days of hard labor without ever complaining. Her mother looked at her with a mix of surprise and pride, her eyes wide, her lips trembling as she tried to find the right words. You were amazing," her mother whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The young girl smiled softly, a small but genuine smile, and placed a hand on her mother's shoulder. "I just wanted to show them that I'm not what they think I am." Her mother nodded, her eyes shining. With tears, "You did more than that. You showed them who you really are." The girl didn't respond, but she didn't need to. She knew. She had shown them that no matter who they thought she was more. She was something they could no longer ignore. The night continued, and the once thriving party began to wind down, but the atmosphere was different now. What started as a light-hearted event, filled with laughter and frivolity, had shifted into something deeper, more reflective. The young girl, still caught in the whirlwind of her performance, couldn't help but notice the subtle change in the air. The whispers that once mocked her now seemed filled with curiosity. The eyes that once saw her as nothing more than a servant were now filled with a mix of admiration and surprise. She wasn't sure if they had truly recognized her worth yet, but she had made her point. She had shown them something they hadn't expected, and in doing so, she had made a name for herself. As the evening progressed, Charles Harrington, the billionaire who had hosted the party, found himself increasingly distracted. He couldn't get the image of the girl out of his mind. He had been in the business world for decades, and in all that time, he had learned one valuable lesson. People who are underestimated are often the ones who can surprise you the most. She was just supposed to be a joke, a maid's daughter performing a ridiculous dance for entertainment. But what she had shown tonight was far from a joke. There was something undeniable about her presence, something that commanded respect in a way that no amount of wealth could match. As the night grew later, Harrington's curiosity got the better of him. He found himself walking towards the corner where the young girl had disappeared with her mother. He could see the two of them speaking quietly, a moment of connection after the chaos of the evening. He stood for a moment, observing them from afar, wondering if he should approach. He had built his empire on the ability to spot potential, to recognize talent in unexpected places. But tonight, he realized that he had missed something. He had seen the girl as nothing more than an ornament for his party, a symbol of his wealth and status, but now he saw her differently. She wasn't just a servant or a laughingstock. She was someone who had a story, a future, and perhaps a talent that could rival any of the world's greatest performers. Finally, after a brief moment of hesitation, Harrington took a step forward and approached the two of them. He cleared his throat gently, causing both the girl and her mother to turn toward him. "That was an incredible performance," he said, his voice warm but measured. The girl looked up at him, still a little stunned by his presence. She didn't say anything, but her mother spoke for her. "Thank you, sir," her mother replied, her voice filled with pride. "You've got something special," Harrington continued, his tone now carrying an undeniable sincerity. "I don't know where you came from, but what I saw tonight, it's something rare." The girl's heart raced. She had expected nothing from him, no recognition, no respect. She had simply wanted to prove that she was more than what people thought of her. But here he was, acknowledging her talent, not just her performance. It was the first time anyone of his stature had ever treated her like an equal. She had always been invisible, a ghost in the halls of the rich and powerful, but tonight, for the first time, she was seen. The young girl smiled softly, her eyes meeting Harrington's with a mix of gratitude and determination. "Thank you, sir," she finally said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions she felt. Harrington nodded, then turned to her mother. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out," he said, before walking away. As he left, the young girl felt a surge of emotions. She had done it. She had stood up to the world that tried to make her feel small and had shown them that she was anything but. She looked at her mother, who smiled back at her, a smile that was full of pride and love. For the first time, the young girl felt that maybe, just maybe, her life could be different from the one she had always known. She wasn't just a maid's daughter anymore. She was someone with potential, someone who had just begun to prove her worth. The days that followed were filled with a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. The young girl, who had once been invisible to the world around her, now found herself at the center of a whirlwind. The recognition she had received at the party, the acknowledgement from Charles Harrington, had opened doors she never thought possible. But with this newfound attention came a sense of unease. Her world, which had always been simple and predictable, was suddenly filled with unknowns. She wasn't sure what to make of all the changes happening so quickly. Her mother noticed the shift in her daughter. The once quiet, reserved girl who had always kept to herself was now speaking of opportunities and ideas she had never voiced before. But her mother also saw the unease in her eyes. "You don't have to take any of these opportunities if you're not ready," her mother said one evening as they sat together, watching the sunset. "I've worked hard to make sure you had a chance at something better, but this is your life. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, especially not people who think they know your worth." The young girl nodded, but deep down, she knew her mother was wrong. She wasn't doing this for anyone else. She wasn't trying to prove anything to the wealthy elite who had laughed at her. She was doing this for herself. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and invitations. It seemed like everyone wanted to know who she was now. Charles Harrington had reached out, offering her a chance to join a performance arts program in one of the city's most prestigious academies. The offer was tempting, but also terrifying. She had never imagined that she would be considered for such an opportunity, let alone invited to study with the best in the field. But as exciting as the prospect was, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. She still remembered the laughter, the mocking faces, the way they had treated her before she had danced. It was hard to reconcile the two worlds, the world of the rich and powerful who now seemed interested in her talent, and the world she came from, where her worth had always been measured by her ability to serve. One afternoon, as she sat at the kitchen table, going through the offer letters, her mother walked in and sat beside her. "You don't have to say yes to all of this," her mother repeated softly. "You've already shown them who you are. You don't owe anyone anything." The young girl looked at her mother, her heart swelling with emotion. Her mother had worked so hard, and now she was giving her the choice to follow her dreams, to chase a future that had always seemed out of reach. It was a choice she never thought she would have, and yet, here it was, right in front of her. But as she sat there, looking at the letters, something inside her clicked. She realized that this wasn't just about showing the rich and powerful who she was. This was about her own journey. It wasn't about proving something to them. It was about proving something to herself. She wasn't just a maid's daughter anymore. She was someone with a talent that could change her life, and she was ready to embrace that future. She smiled at her mother, the uncertainty melting away. "I think it's time," she said quietly, her voice steady. "Time for me to take a chance on myself." And with that, she made the decision that would shape the rest of her life. As the days passed, the young girl's life began to take on a new rhythm. She had accepted the offer to join the prestigious Performance Arts Academy, but she felt a mix of excitement and fear that constantly lingered. The weight of her decision was heavier than she had expected. She wasn't just moving to a new school, she was stepping into a world where she was no longer the invisible maid's daughter. She was now a student, someone with the potential to be great, to be recognized for her talent. But as thrilling as this new world was, she couldn't ignore the lingering doubt that always followed her. Would they accept her for who she really was? Or would she forever be seen as the help, the outsider? The academy was located in the heart of the city, a place of endless opportunity and wealth. The campus was filled with bright, ambitious students from all walks of life, many of them already accomplished in their fields. As she walked through the grand hallways on her first day, she couldn't help but feel small in comparison. Everyone around her seemed so confident, so at ease in their new surroundings. But she quickly reminded herself of what had gotten her here, her talent. She had proven herself at the party, and now it was time to prove it again. The first few weeks were a whirlwind. She had to adjust to the rigorous schedule, the constant rehearsals, and the expectations that came with being at one of the best academies in the country. But through it all, she felt a fire inside her that refused to be extinguished. She pushed herself harder, practicing late into the night, determined to show everyone that she belonged. Her classmates were talented, no doubt, but there was something about the way she moved, the way she expressed herself through dance, that set her apart. It wasn't just about technique for her. It was about telling a story, about making the audience feel something. One evening, as she stood backstage before a major performance, she found herself alone with her thoughts. She could hear the applause from the audience, the murmurs of excitement, but it all felt distant. Her mind was racing, doubts creeping in. What if she wasn't good enough? What if the rich students at the academy were right about her? What if her talent couldn't carry her through? Just as these thoughts began to overwhelm her, a voice interrupted. It was her instructor, a seasoned dancer who had trained some of the best in the world. "You're ready," the instructor said, a knowing smile on her face. "I've seen your growth, your dedication. This is your moment. Go out there and show them who you are." The girl took a deep breath, steadying herself. She wasn't just a maid's daughter anymore. She was a dancer, an artist, and tonight, she was going to prove it. As she stepped onto the stage, the lights blinding her for a moment, she felt a sense of peace. She wasn't performing for anyone else. She was performing for herself. The music began, and she moved with grace and passion, every movement telling a story of triumph and struggle, of overcoming the odds. The audience watched in silence, captivated by her presence, her emotion, and her undeniable talent. By the end of the performance, the silence was deafening. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. And then, the applause came. It was louder than she had ever imagined, the sound filling the theater and reverberating through her entire being. She had done it. She had proven herself. As she bowed and left the stage, she felt the weight of her past lift from her shoulders. She had shown them all that she was more than just a maid's daughter. She was someone who could stand on the same stage as the world's greatest artists. And in that moment, she knew that this was only the beginning of her journey. The applause from her performance lingered in her ears for days. But as the young girl navigated her new life at the academy, she found that the applause had a way of fading into the background. It wasn't the recognition she was chasing anymore. It was the feeling of belonging, the certainty that she could stand among the best and be proud of who she was. The days were filled with intense practice, early mornings, late nights, and the pressure of maintaining her place in a world that was still foreign to her. But she embraced it all, determined to keep pushing herself, to prove that her performance was no fluke. The other students in the academy, many of whom had been trained for years, began to notice her dedication. At first, they viewed her as an outsider, someone who didn't belong in the world of privilege and art they occupied. But slowly, they began to see something different in her. Her passion for dance was unmatched, her raw talent undeniable. She wasn't trying to fit in, she was carving her own space. One afternoon, as the class prepared for another rigorous routine, the instructor, a woman with decades of experience in the dance world, called the young girl over. "I've been watching you," the instructor said, her voice calm but firm. "You have a fire, something special. But you're holding back. If you want to be great, you need to take risks. Push beyond what you think you're capable of." The young girl nodded, taking in every word. She had always held herself back, unsure of her place in this world. But the instructor was right. It was time to let go of the doubt, to stop thinking she didn't belong, to trust in her own abilities. That night, after the academy had quieted down, she stood in front of the mirror in her dorm room, her reflection staring back at her. She could see the girl who had once been invisible, the one who had danced to silence the crowd. But now, she saw someone else, someone who was ready to embrace her future, no matter what it looked like. The next day, during practice, she made a decision. She would dance like she had nothing to lose, no expectations to meet. She was no longer the maid's daughter, no longer the quiet girl hiding in the back. She was a dancer, and nothing else mattered. As the music began, she moved with a newfound confidence. Every step was bolder, every leap higher, every turn smoother. Her classmates watched, their eyes wide as she pushed herself further than ever before. The instructor, standing on the sidelines, smiled approvingly, recognizing the shift in her performance. The girl had finally found her freedom. When the music ended, the room was silent. Not because she had failed, but because they had all witnessed something remarkable. The young girl had proven to herself, and to everyone around her, that she was more than capable. She was a force to be reckoned with. In the days that followed, the academy's atmosphere changed. No longer was she seen as the outsider. She was now one of them. Her classmates sought her out, asked her for advice, and admired her determination. But it wasn't the praise or the newfound respect that mattered to her. It was the way she had finally begun to see herself. Not as a maid's daughter, not as someone who needed to prove her worth, but as a dancer, a true artist. And that, more than anything, was the victory she had been searching for all along. Weeks went by, and the young girl's confidence continued to grow. With every practice, every performance, she felt herself getting closer to the dancer she had always wanted to be. The academy had become her second home, and the students who once saw her as an outsider now looked to her for inspiration. She had earned their respect, not by fitting in, but by staying true to herself. Yet, despite the recognition she was receiving, a feeling of unease still lingered. As her talent blossomed, she couldn't help but wonder what the next chapter of her life would look like. She had proven herself in the academy, but the world beyond it still seemed so vast, so uncertain. She wasn't sure where her journey would take her next. One afternoon, after a particularly exhausting rehearsal, the girl sat on the edge of the stage, her legs dangling over the side as she caught her breath. The music had stopped, but her mind was still racing. She was lost in thought when a familiar voice interrupted her. "You've come a long way," the instructor said, walking over and taking a seat beside her. The young girl turned to her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I've been watching you," the instructor replied. "I've seen your growth, your hard work. But I also see someone who's still unsure of where they're headed. You're not just a student here. You're someone with a future that could be anything you want it to be." The girl shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know if I'm ready for that. There's so much I still need to learn. I feel like I'm just starting to understand what I'm capable of." The instructor nodded. "You're never really ready, you know? But the key is not waiting for the perfect moment. It's about taking the opportunities that come your way, even if they scare you. You've proven you have the talent. Now it's time to trust yourself." The young girl thought about her instructor's words long after the conversation had ended. She had spent so much of her life waiting for permission to be great, for someone to tell her it was okay to dream big. But now, she was beginning to realize that she didn't need anyone's approval. She had already proven herself. She had shown the world what she was capable of. As the academy year drew to a close, the young girl faced a decision. She had received offers from several prestigious dance companies, each one promising her a future filled with opportunity. But the weight of that decision was heavy. She could choose to stay in the comfort of the academy, where she had earned her place, or she could step into the unknown, where the challenges would be greater, but so would the rewards. One evening, after another long practice, she found herself standing outside, staring at the city lights in the distance. She thought about everything she had accomplished, everything she had overcome. She thought about her mother, who had always believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. She realized that the time had come to take the leap. She couldn't stay in the safety of the academy forever. The world was waiting for her, and it was time to show it what she was made of. The next morning, she made the call. She had chosen the path that scared her the most, the path that would take her out of the academy and into the world of professional dance. It was a risk, but she was ready. She wasn't the maid's daughter anymore. She was a dancer, and the world was about to see her rise. The decision was made, and with it came a flood of emotions. The young girl, now a dancer on the cusp of stepping into the professional world, had just taken a bold step that would change the course of her life forever. The academy had been her sanctuary, a place where she had been able to grow, but now it was time to leave. She had learned so much, but she knew that in order to truly fulfill her potential, she had to face the real world, the challenges, the risks, and the unknowns. Her first performance outside the academy was both exhilarating and terrifying. It was with a renowned dance company, one of the offers she had received after graduation. The night before the performance, she lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts swirling. She couldn't help but wonder if she was ready. Could she really perform at the same level as the seasoned professionals she had watched in awe? Could she stand out among dancers who had years of experience? As the morning arrived, she found herself standing in front of the mirror, putting on her performance attire. She had come a long way since those early days at the academy, where she had been unsure of herself, hesitant to embrace her talent. But now, she saw a different reflection. She wasn't the girl who had been laughed at the party anymore. She was a dancer, a force to be reckoned with, and she was about to prove that to the world. The theater was filled with anticipation as she made her way backstage. She could hear the hum of the audience, the rustling of programs, the faint chatter of the staff preparing for the show. But all of that felt distant. The only thing that mattered now was the stage, the music, and the story she was about to tell with her body. As the lights dimmed and the curtains rose, she stepped into the spotlight. The music enveloped her, and for a moment, she was lost in the rhythm. She moved with fluidity, her body telling a story that no words could express. She had always been able to dance, but tonight, it felt different. Every move was deliberate, every expression on her face authentic. She wasn't just performing for an audience. She was performing for herself. The performance was breathtaking. The audience was captivated, their eyes fixed on her every movement. The other dancers, who had once seemed untouchable, now watched in awe as she executed the most complex steps with ease, her grace undeniable. By the time the music ended, the room was silent, save for the sound of the young girl's heartbeat racing in her chest. She stood there, her body trembling with exhaustion and exhilaration, waiting for the inevitable applause. And when it came, it was thunderous. It was not just a polite round of applause. It was genuine admiration for her talent, her passion, and her ability to transform the stage into something magical. She had done it. She had proven that she belonged in this world, among the best. As she bowed, she felt a wave of emotions wash over her. There was pride, joy, and relief, but most of all, there was gratitude. She had come so far, and in that moment, she knew that no matter what happened next, she had found her place. She wasn't just a girl from humble beginnings anymore. She was a dancer, and the world had seen her. As the months passed, the young dancer's life continued to transform in ways she had never imagined. Each new performance brought her more recognition, more opportunities, and a deeper understanding of herself as an artist. The applause from her last show echoed in her mind, reminding her of how far she had come. It was a feeling she had never known before, one that made her heart swell with pride and gratitude. But with success came a new set of challenges. The spotlight that had once felt so distant was now a constant presence in her life. She was no longer just a dancer. She was becoming a symbol of resilience, of the possibility that anyone, no matter their background, could achieve greatness. The pressure was both thrilling and overwhelming. There were always more auditions, more shows, more expectations. People wanted her to be more, to do more, to give more. And though she was grateful for every opportunity, there were days when the weight of it all felt too much to bear. But every time she thought about giving up, she remembered the girl who had once been invisible, the girl who had danced for herself, not for anyone else. She reminded herself that the real reason she danced wasn't for fame or recognition, but for the pure joy of movement, the expression of emotion through her body. One evening, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, she found herself sitting alone in the dressing room, reflecting on how far she had come. The walls around her felt familiar, yet somehow different. They were no longer just the walls of a theater. They were a reminder of the journey she had taken. She thought about her mother, who had always believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. She thought about the party, the mocking laughter, the forced dance that had set her on this path. It had been the catalyst that changed everything. And now, as she sat there, she realized that her journey wasn't just about proving herself to others. It was about proving something to herself. She had done more than just survive. She had thrived. She had turned every challenge, every setback, into a stepping stone that had brought her closer to her dreams. Her story was one of perseverance, of fighting against the odds, and of embracing the power of her own potential. In that moment, she knew that she was ready for whatever came next. There would always be new challenges, new performances, new heights to reach. But she was no longer afraid. She had already proven that she could overcome anything. She stood up, walked to the mirror, and smiled at the reflection staring back at her. She wasn't just a dancer anymore. She was a woman who had found her voice, her strength, and her place in the world. And as she left the dressing room that night, ready to take on the next challenge, she knew that her story was far from over. It had only just begun. This incredible journey, shared through heartfelt millionaire stories, reveals the power of perseverance and self-belief. It follows the life of a young girl who rises from the depths of ridicule to stand among the best in the world, proving that no matter where you start, greatness is possible. As her talent is discovered, the millionaire stories unfold, showing how hard work, resilience, and the willingness to embrace opportunities can lead to success. This is more than just a tale of a performer. It is a story of transformation, where a girl once overlooked and underestimated by those around her proves her worth on the grand stage. Through the ups and downs, the millionaire stories emphasize the importance of self-belief and the courage to step into the unknown. This story is filled with moments that inspire and show that anyone, no matter their background, has the potential to become extraordinary. By overcoming challenges and embracing her dreams, the girl's journey mirrors many millionaire stories where success is earned, not given. In the end, the millionaire stories offer a powerful message that every person's path to greatness is unique, and it's those who dare to believe in themselves who truly succeed.